Down this road is a small city once thriving and full of life, but now desolate and abandoned. Well, abandoned save for the horrors rumored to reside within, which I presume is why you're here. Now, there's nothing wrong with a little morbid curiosity, but please, remember to stay close to your guides. We wouldn't want anyone to get left behind now.
Hello and welcome to Nopeville, the city filled with all the terrifying and horrible things that make you say nope.
Nope.
We're your tour guides. I'm Jen.
And I'm Christine, and we invite you to join our tours through the city, including all things paranormal, true crime, and supernatural.
From haunted places to possessions.
From serial killers to cults.
From zombies to cryptids.
You can find out more on our website at nopevillepodcast.com.
And catch a tour today wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you a fan of true crime, cults, conspiracies, and all things sinister? Then tune in with me, your host Steph, every week for a new episode of the Sinister Story Hour. You can find the Sinister Story Hour on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Edward October, creator-host of Octoberpod, and we're both listening to Calls of Death on the Darkcast network.
Cause of Death portrays imagery of death, war, and destruction. It may not be suitable for children under the age of 13. Hello, and welcome to Cause of Death. I'm your host, Jackie Moranti. This is a special More Than You Ever Wanted to Know episode regarding monkeypox. I'm going to address the pox viruses in a future season, but with the current outbreak of the monkeypox virus and the several questions I'm getting about it, I thought I'd address those questions in a special episode. I'm not going to go too far into the etiology and pathology or the history, since those things will be better suited to the actual episode on monkeypox. The main questions that I'm getting are, what is monkeypox and should we be worried about it? And they're fair. Those are fair questions. Let's talk about what it is and how people get it first. Monkeypox is a rare disease thought to be spread by non-human primates or rodents. But the natural reservoir is unclear. Several species of rodent have been identified as carriers of monkeypox, such as rope squirrels, tree squirrels, Gambian pouched rats, and dormice. But there may be more carriers out there. Symptoms are similar to those of smallpox, but they're far milder. The symptoms include fever, headache, muscle aches, and malaise. Of course, the pox show up within 1 to 3 days. The difference between monkeypox and smallpox is that the lymph nodes will swell with monkeypox infection. The disease typically lasts for about 2 to 4 weeks, then it wears itself out. It does have a high mortality rate of about 10%. There is currently no approved treatment for monkeypox, but it can be treated with various antivirals and vaccinia immunoglobulin. There is also a vaccine. Monkeypox is closely related to smallpox, so the smallpox vaccine can be used against monkeypox. Granted, the general public hasn't been vaccinated for smallpox since 1972, but the vaccine is still being stockpiled and it can become available very quickly if there is more than a small outbreak of monkeypox. And this outbreak is very small. There are about 80 cases reported across England, Canada, Spain, Portugal, Sweden, Italy, France, and the U.S. Now let's put this into perspective. In Nigeria alone, about 3,000 monkeypox cases per year are reported to WHO. Monkeypox is endemic in Africa. While the cause of this outbreak is unknown, there is some indication that it is sexually transmitted. Nigeria has never seen sexual transmission of monkeypox, and sexual transmission has never been proven. The current outbreak has been traced mostly to young men who have not previously traveled to Africa. As of today, no one has died in the outbreak, and the symptoms have been relatively mild. Since this is an atypical outbreak, tracing has become more important. At this time, it's thought that the first patient may have had some contact with monkeypox while traveling to Africa, then brought it back to the West. Epidemiologists are looking at the possibility that this outbreak started around 11 years ago and has just come to light since there has been heightened awareness. Okay, let's talk about transmission. Transmission typically occurs when someone comes into contact with the virus from an infected animal, person, or fomite. Generally, the virus enters the body through an open wound through the respiratory tract or through the mucous membranes. Here's where I shout out to my friend Claire, who loves to pet the wildlife. Claire, just don't pet the wildlife. Animal-to-human transmission is often caused by a bite or scratch, meat preparation, yes, people do eat monkeys and rodents, direct contact with the lesions, or indirect contact through contaminated animal bedding. Human-to-human transmission is thought to occur through respiratory droplets, like coughing, sneezing, breathing on people. Gross. Prolonged up-close face-to-face contact is necessary to get this. So, the infected person has to sneeze directly on you. This virus does not stay viable without a host for long. Of course, those who are caring for patients must be extremely careful since bodily fluids in direct contact with lesions can spread the virus to others. Prevention includes avoiding contact with any animals that could harbor the virus. Claire, this means you. Avoiding contact with any infected materials, such as bedding that has come into contact with an infected animal or human. Isolation for infected patients for the entire time that the virus is active. And of course, good hygiene. Wash your hands after contact with any infected animal or human. Use soap. Always, always, always use the proper PPE and use that PPE properly. The vaccine that I referred to earlier is called Imvamune or Imvanex. It's an attenuated live virus vaccine that has been approved by the FDA for prevention of monkeypox. There is a More Than You Ever Wanted to Know episode explaining all about the differences between vaccines in Season 1. I believe it's the first Q&A, so go back and listen to that if you're curious about the live attenuated vaccines. Keep in mind that this is not an mRNA vaccine. That Q&A will explain that also. At this point, there is some debate as to whether or not we should break out those stockpiles and start vaccinating again. But since this outbreak is rather small, it may be prudent to wait. For those who were vaccinated back in the 70s or 60s, that vaccine has waned. So, if monkeypox does become endemic, be ready to line up to take that vaccine. It will become mandatory, and you can have a scar on your other arm. Now, several people asked if we should be worried about this becoming a pandemic. The answer to that is that epidemiologists are always concerned when there is an atypical outbreak of any disease, especially when the disease is coming from an unknown origin. So the short answer to that question is yes, be concerned. The long answer is a little less ominous. This is a very small outbreak of a disease that we only very rarely see outside of Africa. While there are a few cases cropping up worldwide, it's still a very small outbreak. As of this recording, there are less than 100 cases outside of Africa. Now, Concern rises a bit when the question of whether or not the disease has become sexually transmissible when there has been no historical evidence of that. Does that mean that there has been a mutation? Maybe, but probably not. If we think about sexual transmission from a different point of view, it could be that through sex, the partners of the infected persons have come into contact with the fluid in the lesions. That's one of the common ways that monkeypox is spread. I'm more willing to wait a bit to see what happens with this than to jump into my Tyvek and start spraying the hallways of my apartment building with acidified bleach, honestly. I know that any time a disease has the word pox in it, people become extremely concerned about a reoccurrence of smallpox. But if you go back and listen to the episodes that I did on smallpox in Season 1, you'll be able to see that smallpox taught us a lot about emerging disease and how they should be handled. In the moment, this one seems fairly well under control. Another thing that scares people is the media. The media jumped on monkeypox, and the word spread far and wide that this could be the next big thing that will force us back into quarantine. And the media probably jumped on it because it had pox in the name. In truth, the 2 cases that the U.S. is reporting now is nothing compared to the outbreak of 2003, when 71 cases were reported in July of that year across Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Missouri, Ohio, and Wisconsin. There was no media coverage of that outbreak. None. Those cases were traced back to infected animals that had been imported from Ghana. What I'm saying here is that monkeypox isn't new. It's been around forever. When I get to the season on pox viruses, you'll see how long, and you'll see that it isn't the first time that the disease has emerged outside of Africa. Of course, stemming the spread will all depend on how the spread is handled. Tracing is in place, and epidemiologists are working to find out where the index case came from. Poor patient 0. That guy is always in trouble. All of that said, I'm more concerned about another emerging disease that I talked about in Season 2. That would be avian influenza. Wait, you're saying what, Jackie? I didn't see that one in the news. You're right. Very little media attention has been focused on the avian influenza outbreak worldwide, including the U.S., and that one could be potentially more devastating than monkeypox. Let's do a little comparison between these 2 diseases. Monkeypox can be controlled through a vaccine. While there is no apparent treatment, there are treatments available. Avian influenza can be vaccinated against as long as you're a chicken. That vaccine is only used in emergency situations and after the outbreak has occurred. Neither of these diseases have approved treatments, but monkeypox has seen enough research that there are antivirals and immunoglobulin treatments available. Avian influenza has nothing but supportive care. They make you comfortable until you decide you're going to live or die. The mortality rate of monkeypox hovers somewhere around 10%. The mortality rate of avian influenza is a whopping 60%. Monkeypox and avian influenza are both somewhat rare, but outbreaks do happen. Monkeypox is most certainly zoonotic. The virus jumps from animals to people quite easily. Only in rare cases does avian influenza jump to people, but it does happen. Mostly it happens in those who work with infected animals for long periods of time. For instance, those who work in chicken breeding and slaughter facilities. Now, this doesn't mean that avian influenza won't start being spread from person to person. That could happen with a small mutation. Monkeypox is a very slow mutator. There may be a mutation event occurring now, but as far as we know, this would be the first time that it's mutated in its history. Influenza viruses mutate very quickly, so the potential for avian influenza to become emergent in people is highly likely. Monkeypox does not affect the food supply. Have you noticed that the price of chicken and eggs has gone